Hi everyone, and welcome to the release of the much anticipated season 3 of the consulting offer. So in today's video, which is going to precede the launch of the series in a few days or few hours for that matter, I'm going to talk you through what to expect and also give you some tips and guidance on how to use TCO3 based on what we have seen people do in season 1 of the consulting offer and season 2. For those of you who may be new to the consulting offer, I'm going to also give you a brief rundown on what the show is about. So obviously, Jennifer was a participant in season 3. That's why her photo appears on this video and why we'll be referring to her so much. Now, for those of you who don't know about the consulting offer, it's quite a simple program. There is no other case interview training program like it in the world. We've been doing it now for 5 seasons. Season 4 and 5 are now taking place. So that's why we say it's in its 5th season. It's the largest case interview training program in the world. There's no other program like it in the world where we take real people, train them for the interviews, record everything, and show you how they did. And it's also the most successful case training program in the world. If you think about it, when we take these candidates, we are putting our reputations on the line, because if we fail to place them, well, clearly our reputation takes a hit. And we have been the most successful program because we have a 50% placement rate for the 8 participants in seasons 1, 2, and 3. Season 4 is taking place now, and season 5 is about to start, but just a 50% placement rate for McKinsey, BCG, and Bain. That placement rate goes up even higher if you include non-target firms, banks, and so on. And of course, what makes our program very unique is all our training is by ex-partners, right? Season 2 was done with a McKinsey partner, there's BCG partners involved, and so on. And in future seasons, we'll also have probably BCG partners and maybe even another McKinsey partner involved. My point is that it's the biggest program and the most successful program because the results are very public. We have, at this point, close to 350 hours of video coaching on cases, fit, communication, resume, editing, and more. So across all the seasons, 350 hours, TCO4, every day. This number goes up as we start doing more sessions for TCO4. Across those 350 hours of recordings, there's well over 150 cases. That's a minimum number. We haven't gone through all of the new cases then, but the number is definitely much higher than 150. The other thing that makes the program unique is that if you look at the 12 participants, that's 8 from the first 3 seasons plus 4 from TCO4, all but one of them had never been declined at McKinsey, BCG, or Bain, and some of them have been declined twice. So when you look at people like Alice, who obviously did very well, someone like Jen, who did very well, even Felix and Sanjeev from season 1, you probably think to yourself, well, these guys are good, right? That's where they got in. But you must not forget that they have had multiple previous declines under their belt. And we brought them into the program and we showed you how, with the right kind of coaching, even someone who may have been declined, even though someone who may have done an internship and never gotten an offer, like some of the participants, can place successfully. From TCO3, we went on a big diversity focus. TCO1, 2, and 3 have been dominated, I wouldn't say dominated by PhDs, because TCO, they've had roughly the same number, I would say. A lot of MBAs and a lot of PhDs, right? But in TCO3 onwards, and especially TCO4, we made a big push. One is there are more Hispanics in the program, African Americans, we even have Muslim candidates in the program. The big push for diversity was not at the expense of quality. These are all very talented people. TCO4 is the first season where there are no PhDs participating. And that's not because we chose not to bring in PhDs. There were a lot of PhD applicants, but we have a very strict vetting process. You have to go through a submission where you have to write an essay, send a video of yourself. We then screen from that. We then take you through a set of 3 interviews after the initial screening, and then there's a final screening as well. So you go through 5 levels of screening. PhDs didn't make it through all 5 levels. That's why they didn't get into this season of TCO4, right? But in TCO3, Jen is there. MBAs in TCO3 did very well to get to the final round, but none of them made it into the final cut. In TCO 4, there are many more, well, not many more MBAs. There's one MBA who's an active Booth student. And in TCO 4, there were seven students from Booth in the MBA program from this year made it to the final round, of which 2 made it to the final cut, and we only accepted 1 of them. So there are a lot more MBA interest, and just from one school for that matter. The reason I'm talking about TCO 4 so much is because TCO 4 comes out pretty soon as well. It's not going to be delayed a year like TCO 3. So now let's look at some of the differences, right? Because the program's big, very successful. What are the differences? You've got 3 seasons, even like the 4th season now shooting or about to shoot. Why do you need 3 seasons of the show? Well, it's pretty simple. You need 3 seasons because we're not focusing on the same things. We don't duplicate content and concepts. So if you look at season 1, 2, 3, 4, the content and concepts are going to be different. If you look at participants within a season, they don't do the same cases. They're all doing different cases. So you're getting a lot of training, right? In season 1, we focused on the basics of everything. Resumes, communication, estimations, hypotheses, brainstorming, all the types of cases and so on. We over-invested in teaching core thinking and logic skills. So if you subscribe and you say, well, I'm just going to watch TCO 3 and TCO 2, then you are going to miss out because you won't be able to solve TCO 2 and TCO 3 cases because you haven't focused on the basics. TCO 2 was shot live, as many of you know. Kevin Quine, the ex-McKinsey senior partner and head of the Worldwide Strategy Practice, or co-head of the Worldwide Strategy Practice, led that season as a guest coach. And he worked with Alice and he worked with Michael Klein. Here the focus was on final round and final round dinners. Basically, we mimicked everything that would happen those 4 days leading up to the final round and the final round itself, from the breakfast sessions, the dinner sessions, and so on. And we focused heavily on inference cases where no frameworks can be used. I mean, you cannot solve those cases with frameworks. You could try and you maybe could get there. But I don't think I would recommend any student doing that because it's insanely complex. It's a case whereby you have to use a certain kind of technique that's very common to final round cases. You can't do season 2 until you've understood season 1. Season 3 with Jennifer obviously assumes you've watched TCO 1 and 2, but what makes TCO 3 different? Well, we focused heavily on break-even analysis, cost volume profit curves, and tougher inference-based cases. So not only are the cases more difficult in season 3, they're also requiring a much deeper understanding of cost volume profit or break-even analysis. That's one of the weaknesses we identified in season 2. It was a weakness with both Alice and Michael. It was also a weakness with members to TCO who were watching it. They just couldn't understand it. So we realized people weren't really understanding TCO 2. So in TCO 3, we put a bigger focus on explaining it. TCO 4 obviously requires a deep understanding of TCO 1, 2, 3, but big differences with TCO 4. It's going to be real time. We're not waiting years to release it. It's going to come out pretty soon, right? There are no PhDs in TCO 4, which is a big thing, right? PhDs have dominated TCO 1, TCO 2, TCO 3. There are not even a PhD participant in TCO 4. And that's not because we planned it that way. That's simply the selection process. They didn't make the cut. There is one MBA and there are 3 experienced hires here. And experienced hires are very interesting. There's a consultant in one of the big 4 firms. There is someone who's the national practice leader for one of the big 4 accounting firms. So that's someone really senior, right? Not some junior accountant, not some junior auditor, not a team leader auditor, but the practice leader. Someone who sits on probably the operating or executive committee. And then there's a pricing analyst, which is maybe a bit misleading because this person has a lot of experience in the aviation sector and is now a pricing analyst. And finally, we have a current Booth student. So someone who's currently completing their MBA at Booth is in this program, right? Now, knowing these differences, I want to offer some advice for candidates or subscribers and members who are going to either watch TCO 1, 2, 3, and even 4 at some point, right? We know everything that happens on the website. This is a screenshot that was taken 2 days ago at 8:17 a.m. So let me show you how to read this, right? The backend of our website gives us a lot of information. This is a real-time graph. At 8:17 a.m., simultaneously 247 people were watching this video. Kevin introduces the competitive advantage in marketplaces case. It's a big video which explains monopoly economics, right? Now I'm going to talk you through this so you get a sense of how we know what is happening. What this is saying is that from the time people have started watching to here, there's only been a 51% average engagement. What that means is that over the course of the video, 51% of people either pause, stopped, or move on, right? Over the period when this snapshot was taken, and it's a time lapse here, from the start of the video to the end, the video was played 431 times. That means that even though 247 people are actually watching it right now, another roughly 160 people joined and left during that time. The average play rate, which the system calculates, is 79%. So what you can see here is that a lot of people start, then they drop, they leave the video, show a lot of interest here, drop and leave, and then a lot of interest here. Now, the red line is the average of all 247 people. The blue is the actual participation of one user. So I clicked on one user's account and took this video. Now what this is telling you is that a lot of interest at the beginning, then drops, and when Kevin starts explaining the case, people stop, pause, they rewind, and so on, and a lot of interest, then it just fades and fades and fades and fades and fades. And you can see here that there's no replays. There's not because you'd see spikes if there were replays, right? A lot of interest at the beginning of the case, and when he starts explaining the economics, no one's replaying it, which tells me that people are not focusing on the right things. They're just kind of watching it. Now, this is obviously an aggregate video, or an aggregate graph. It's telling me how people are watching one video. But we can take this further. For this one video, we can break down those 247 members and see what they're doing. And there it is. This is the same video. We are splitting out the 247 members, or I think it's actually splitting out the 400 or so members, right? So each line here is a different member. Right, so each one is a different member, but watching the same video. So you can see here, this member watched quite a few repeatedly, right? So the colors indicate the frequency with which you watch a part of the video. If it's white, that means you haven't watched anything. See, this member logged in and left. Could be any number of reasons they left, but if they log back in and watch the video, the system will capture it, so this will eventually turn a different color. If they watch a part of the video once, it's green. If they watch it twice, it's yellow. And then obviously, as they watch more and more, it gets darker and darker. So what this tells you is that when you see darkness, it means they stopped, they rewinded, they stopped, they rewinded, right? So what you can see is a sea of yellow, which means people watched it between once or twice, right? These numbers indicate the total number of videos they have watched. So this user, while we're looking at how they watched this video on Kevin, they've watched 136 videos in total in the system. And if I click here, this little arrow, it'll give me a breakdown of all the videos they watched. Obviously, we can see the client names here, so we can see your name. Well, if you're a coaching client, I know exactly what you've done when you come into the coaching session because I can pull up this graph, right? This tells me the percentage of this particular video you've watched. Have you watched 90%, 20%? The system works it out for us, right? Now, as you can see, this skimming or just viewing the most basics of the video is quite common. Most people are only watching it once and twice. When the system says twice, it's basically, it doesn't mean you've watched it twice. It actually means that you've watched it, it actually means twice because I think here, that is right. Yellow is this color. Green is this color. So all of it is been watched once, right? See, most people are watching it once. And even though I designed the cases in TCO II, Kevin did them in a slightly different way. So I had to watch them a few times to understand the logic that sits behind them. And I designed the cases, and I had to watch them a few times. So when someone who hasn't designed the cases, wasn't a partner, doesn't understand strategy as well as we both do, is only watching it once, I can clearly see they're not understanding everything. And that's a concern for me. Now, remember I said I can click on this arrow and it gives me more detail on you. Well, let's do that, right? This is one members' viewing habits. You can see here that I know a lot about this member. Right? Remember, all of this is automated. We get this very quickly. So, for example, if member wants to speak to me, I can pull up this file in like 2 seconds. And I've done it many times for clients. If you're a coaching client, this file drives the way we teach you because we can see everything you've done. So you can see here, we'll know the total amount of hours you've spent, how many videos you've watched, how much of the videos you are watching, and how long you've been in the program. We know where in the world you are, your IP addresses, color frequencies, again, lots of detail. In fact, we can even then, if we want, which is basically one click, superimpose the ideal viewing curve, and it looks like something like this. If we clicked on the button, it will do a spike like that. And each graph has that spike. What that means is that we can then see, he's watching a lot here, but actually we'd want him to watch a lot here, 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 here. Now, obviously we're tracking a lot of things in real time per member. I'm getting this in real time. It's not taking me a month to aggregate. The system generates this automatically, right? So we can aggregate all of this viewing habits across members, between members, by country, by region, by video, by case type. It's quite impressive, right? Now, we can also link all of this, and we do link all of this to see how comments take place, what podcasts you are watching. So we can see what videos you are watching, when you watch the videos, before and after a podcast. When did you comment? Which videos you comment on most? And this allows us to predict case interview performance. We've mentioned a predictive model. This is part of it. It's not the entire model. This is a small part of it. But we have a lot of predictive capability when people join the coaching program. I know pretty early whether someone's going to be successful or not based on this data and the data we have from previous clients, right? And of course, sometimes we can launch remedial programs to intervene. Sometimes people are very surprised when I'll send them an email out of the blue, a subscriber saying, hey, I noticed the following. I think you need to adjust your training in the following way. They probably wonder how we know that because we track everything. Of course, the reason I send it out of the blue is I just happen to be sitting in front of my laptop that day and watching the screen as all this data is, moving across, and I can pick out what someone is doing. And I'll just click on their name and send them an email and tell them, I'm observing this. I noticed you're doing this. Maybe you need to change a little bit, right? People are always surprised, but because we have so much back-end analytics here. Now, let's talk about some of the lessons. Right? 5 years. We have 5 years of collecting data. And we've worked with several thousand members, not just a few thousand, several thousand members. So let's look at some of the predictions that we've seen, or some of the patterns we've seen which allow us to make predictions, right? There are many people who try to watch everything, like they'll watch one video, they'll try to watch everything in 12 hours. You can't do that. You're watching a video, as I mentioned, with just TCO2, all of the videos are like this. You've got to spend time to understand what is being taught to you. If you're trying to cram in 12 hours into 12 videos, you're not going to think about it. You're not going to even determine if you've learned anything. You're basically going to watch a video once, and you're going to have no time to understand the underlying concept. On average, people need 5 months to prepare watching it because there's so much content. Remember, everything you could possibly want to know about cases is being taught you by ex-partners. Not by associates, not by engagement managers, but by the people who make the final decision. Sure, maybe a junior person can screen your resume, but they don't make the hiring decision. We made the hiring decision. So all our knowledge is being downloaded here, right? I can immediately see when someone's going to fail in the system. When someone starts with TCO2, because they get so excited to be watching, the high glossy videos in the final round, they're going to fail. Because they're watching TCO2, which is very hard, but they don't have the skills to understand TCO2, which comes from TCO1. So that's a pretty rough rule of thumb, which is generally right. Within the videos, people like to script to frameworks and solutions, and they ignore all of the explanations we give. It's not important to know what to do. You have to know why we are doing it. I get a lot of emails, and the entire company gets a lot of emails from people saying, but Michael, why did you do this? Please tell me why you did it. And I always say, well, if you watch the videos carefully, you would know why we did it. It's explained there. But for those people who don't care about why we did it, when they do a real case, they'll just repeat something else. Say, but Michael did this, or Kevin did this, or some other partner did this. That's why I did it, but you don't know why we did it. And you have to know why we did it to know if you should do it as well in the case. All the communication techniques, the way I speak, the way Kevin speaks, you can only get that by actually listening to us speak. Skimming through the videos is not going to help you. Felix, the star of TCO, undisputed champion, right? She's a PhD. And a lot of MBAs, experienced hires say, well, I don't need to follow her. She's a PhD. She's different from me. Honestly, cases are cases. If you are going for case interviews, watch Felix. It applies to every level. MBAs, PhDs, experienced hires. Obviously, you may have to learn additional things, but 80% of what you need comes from Felix's videos. I always tell people you start with Felix, then you go to Sanjeev, then you do only the solutions from Rafik and Samantha, then you switch gears and you go to TCO2 and work through everything. TCO2 is hard. You watch it once, you don't understand it. You watch it twice, you still don't understand it. You watch it 3 times and I can assure you, you won't understand it. You watch it 4 times and work through it very carefully. Watching, as I said, watching a TCO2 or even TCO3 for that matter, because TCO3 is difficult video, without deconstructing it, probably means you don't understand it. I know we will get many emails from people saying I don't understand things because they've watched it once and expect to understand some very complex concepts. Now, there are many clients. You've seen them on the website. You've even listened to their interview. I think we've got an interview with Sandra on our website, and we've published a very detailed study of Arena, probably one of the most detailed studies on a client. And also Sveta, right, who's now happily dating in Paris and working at the McKinsey office. Those candidates mostly prepared by themselves. They watch the videos and prepared. In fact, Sandra interviews on the website. You can listen to her talk about it. She'll tell you exactly what she did. She just watched the videos. So if you're watching the videos carefully, you're saving a lot of time later. You watch the videos weekly, you're going to have to do a lot of work in the future to practice things and figure out what to do. So I would say just watch the videos, save yourself all the hassle of doing all the additional work later because you haven't picked up key skills in the videos, right? But there are other important patterns we see. When we see a member posting a lot of comments, historically, members who post a lot of comments actually do worse in the program. There's a reason for that. It implies they didn't understand the video, which means they are not following the video very carefully and they're missing key things. So a member will say, well, Michael, if I post comments, wouldn't it help me understand it? Not true. Because a couple of reasons. One, for you to post a comment, it automatically implies you didn't understand what's in the video. So you don't understand what's in the video. 2, when you post a comment, you assume you can perfectly communicate what you want to ask. One of the biggest challenges we have with people posting comments, and obviously even though we say the course is self-taught, I still respond to I think all of them eventually. I've never not responded to a comment, but it may take me time. But when people post a comment, if your comment doesn't make sense, or if it's not clear, I'm going to respond to your comment based on what I think you are saying. You are then going to view my response based on what you thought you had written, but it may not actually be what you wrote. So comments are dangerous because it forces you to be very sharp at communication to get your point across. And a lot of people are not like that. They'll say something vague and I'll say that I don't understand it, or I'll respond to it and they'll say, oh, that's not what I meant. And that's an indication that communication skills are bad. So we've seen that people who post a lot of comments generally do badly in the program. I'm trying to speculate why. Yeah, there could be other reasons, but you've seen how much data we collect. Very easy for us to pull the patterns, right? Viewers who watch more than 2-hour blocks don't do well. The mind cannot concentrate for such long periods of time. I would like to think I have a pleasant voice and I make funny comments and so on to keep you entertained, right? I mean, I've single-handedly made Kim Kardashian a major player in the world of case interviews. She should pay me a licensing fee, right? Just for that. But even with all my entertaining anecdotes and stories, which are based on my experience, rising rapidly all the way to partner, 2 hours is too long. When I see someone sitting there and watching videos non-stop for 12 hours, I know they're going to do badly. Sure, they may get in, but they're not fulfilling their potential. Getting in is nothing. You have to do well once you get in, right? We track podcast use and we can link it to a user. We know when you watch a podcast, how you're watching it, how long you listen to it, whether you repeated it. We know everything. And there's a very close correlation between people who listen to our podcast, both case interviews and strategy skills, and those who get in while watching the videos. Because the podcasts do not, and this is important, they do not duplicate insights in the videos. And the videos do not duplicate insights in the podcasts by a logical inference. So what you're doing when you're listening to both or watching both, you are doubling up on your learnings, right? People who watch both always perform better. There are other interesting things we can see here. One is that if you stop watching TCO I at session 16, people see almost a 33% drop in getting offers. And that is based on thousands of subscribers, right? Members who watch TCO II less than 3.34 times, obviously the system is calculating this, so it's giving it an accurate second decimal point. But let's say if you watch it less than 4 times, you have a 40% lower probability of success in London, Boston, New York, Chicago, Zurich, Tokyo, Paris. Why? Because these are big offices. Not just big offices, they are very old offices. They have a greater concentration of senior partners like myself and Kevin, and they are more likely to use the inference-based style of interviewing. And if you cannot interview in that style and you meet someone like us, you do much worse. Now, I'm not saying all senior partners use that style, but a lot of them do. The most senior partners, I would say, use that style because they're comfortable just to run a case based on a study they've done or a concept they've developed versus simply working through something that is a stock standard approach. So that is TCO III, which will be coming out shortly. I'm putting out this video to make sure that you don't make a lot of silly mistakes, and I would say, not fulfill your potential when you're watching these videos. I'm going to leave a very important fact with you. You can read the story. It's 18 pages long on our website. The story of Irina, who grew up in Kiev, and some part of Kiev anyway. And till the age of 25, she basically had made bad choices, and she eventually turned it around, going through these programs, our program, and ended up at McKinsey in one of the Texas offices. You know the story of Sander. You can listen to it on the website. Grew up in a very underprivileged, terrible part of the world, and no hope of getting into the elite firms. Went through the program, just basically watching the videos since she got there. My point I want to make is that if you want to join McKinsey, BCG, or Bain, you will join McKinsey, BCG, or Bain. The question is whether you are willing to not just do the work, but to do the work smartly and be strategic and be patient. But if you quit or it doesn't work, you've obviously done something wrong, assuming you have the background. Now, if you know Irina's story, it took her 5 years or something like that to get in because she didn't have the background. She had to get a degree. So even if you don't have a degree, you can fix things. You should always remember that, one of the lines I use quite often is that, if you aspire to more than society had intended for you, then you should go after it. But you need to be both diligent, patient, and strategic. Life is not fair. Not all of us have the advantages that we see others with, but that doesn't mean that you cannot patiently erode your disadvantages. As always, I hope you like season 3. We'll begin the release in May, and good luck with your preparation.